Welcome to Thursday, June 6, 2024. Your day weather podcast brought to you by Wyoming State Parks. With temperatures getting warm across the state, Wyoming State Parks and historic sites are gearing up with a season of fun and educational summer events. Visit these parks' respective Facebook pages for more information. Well, June 6th, that might sound like a familiar date because it is. It's the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, and that gentleman, Captain James Stagg, was one of the lead meteorologists who consulted with Eisenhower on planning the D-Day invasion. We'll talk about some interesting aspects about that one of the most, if not the most famous weather forecasts in modern times. Overall, weather-wise, this is going to be a quiet day. A lot of you felt some real heat yesterday, and that heat and dryness will continue through early Friday as dry high pressures overhead. But as we've been showing you, there's going to be increasing moisture coming up from the west and also coming up from the southeast and converging into the Continental Divide, both sides of the divide. This is going to bring thunderstorms back into the area starting tomorrow through the weekend and probably into Monday and Tuesday. This is not a guaranteed rain event for everybody, but if you're planning anything outdoors, especially this weekend, especially in the high country, remember your lightning safety rules and remember that you got to plan around these afternoon and evening thunderstorms. It is going to be cooler, as we have been mentioning, to start the week east of the Continental Divide, while heat will stay west of the divide. First of all, let's talk a little bit about forecasting for D-Day, because you have to put yourself back in time, put yourself before satellites, before radar, before high-speed computing, before smartphones, and try to just wrap your brain around trying to forecast the weather for a giant, one of the largest, if not the largest, logistic events of all time. So for the weather and the invasion to all work together, a lot of things needed to be there. Low tides, little cloud cover for air support, light winds to keep the seas down, and full moon to help provide some light. All of those things really lined up on the calendar between June 5th and the 7th. And Eisenhower wanted it to be the 5th. However, we had a large storm that was beginning to affect the English Channel, going through Northwest Europe, moving into France. And it was obvious that the 4th into the 5th was going to be a problem. Now, this is where it gets very interesting, and this is one of the stories that recently has come out, that there was a very key weather observation made in Northwest Ireland that indicated a big change in air pressure was occurring. Basically, the barometer was rising, and rising very quickly. This was a very important piece of data that really played a giant role into helping the weather forecasters try to determine the structure, where the highs were, where the lows were, where the frontal systems were placed. Keep in mind, this is before satellites, and observations like this we take for granted now. A lot of people have their own weather station. We have airports all over the place that are giving us weather observations. Also keep in mind that in wartime, especially in World War II, some of the most secret information that could be attained by both sides, opposing forces, is weather information. It was weather information. U-boats would go out and get above the waterline to take weather observations covertly and report that back so meteorologists could put together weather maps to understand what's going on. So just a simple barometric pressure reading was highly secret during World War II. And this was the case here. And remember, Ireland in World War II was actually neutral, but they did have an agreement to share weather information with the Allies. And that's where the observation was taken. Now, you might say, well, that's far away from Normandy. Well, it is. But if you have high pressure that's building there and heading east-southeast into the region, the timing was that, well, maybe that high pressure ridge would start to bring improving weather into the Normandy area. Captain Stagg, as you saw in that photo at the beginning, surmised that that ridge of high pressure was building up from the Azores and was going to expand. Therefore, while the weather was very bad, the 4th and the 5th, there was an indication that the weather would get better, and hence the rest is history. The woman who took that weather observation from the lighthouse was a woman named Maureen Sweeney. I'm going to give you a link, and there's going to be a couple of links I'm going to post in the description for you folks watching on YouTube. I'm going to put a couple of links there, a YouTube link, and also a link from the Bulletin of American Meteorological Society about this weather observation and more on the weather during the invasion. But what's interesting, very interesting, is she had no idea until 1956 that her observation played a huge role in how things went on D-Day. And she actually just recently passed in December of 2023. It was in 1956 that the weather station there became, basically decommissioned in terms of secret weather information. And so she didn't even know for several years whether things came together. This is a weather map produced by the German meteorologist for that region. And there's a lot more to this story in terms of the weather forecast the Germans made and the weather forecast the Allies made, because they were different. The perception was back at the time that the German forecast was wrong, but it actually wasn't. It's just that the Germans didn't think the break in the weather was going to be long enough for the invasion to occur. So Rommel, who was in charge of the situation in Western France at the time, left for the period of time that the invasion took place back to Germany, thinking that the weather wasn't going to do that. But the weather was good just long enough for the invasion to take place, because the weather wasn't perfect and there was some frontal systems coming in behind. This is a weather map a pilot received on June 5th, and it's kind of hard to see on the map here, but here's Greenland, here's Iceland, here's the United Kingdom, and then you can see we had, if you look very carefully, here's your high that was building in and the lows in behind it. And this is the high that was building up from the Azores that came in. So fascinating. Take a look at the links. I want to thank John in Windsor for bringing Maureen's story to my attention. And this YouTube link will be posted in the description section, as well as another link from the Bulletin of American Meteorological Society, because a lot of people have gone back and reanalyzed the weather maps. And the whole story is a lot more complicated than just one simple observation. But when it comes down to observational weather, taking observations, getting that weather data is really, really critical to successful forecasts. Speaking of which, this is something they didn't have that luxury of, a satellite image. And there's nothing to show. The west is clear. You can see the big high pressure ridge that's overhead right now. But as we have shown you over the last 2 days, we have these little systems. They don't look like much, but they're adding fuel. They're adding moisture to the atmosphere as the clockwise rotation around this high is helping to entrain this moisture back into the west. This will act as a little bit of colder air aloft coming in later over the next few days to help to stabilize the atmosphere. On the surface, southeast winds are beginning to develop as well, and that's going to draw moisture up, but not until late tomorrow. This is the precipitation forecast today through midday tomorrow. So you can see the western United States, there's very little going on. However, as we get closer, this is for Sunday, the weekend, the high pressure ridge breaks down, the systems approach, and we're going to be feeding moisture and instability into the Rockies and the high plains, and the high pressure is going to weaken a little bit. So the end result is going to be first some heat. These are the temperatures today, temperatures tomorrow, and the temperatures as we get on into, this is for the Sunday time frame. You can see the colder air coming in and sliding down east of the divide into the Midwest, but along and west of the divide, it's going to stay very warm through Sunday. This is the precipitable water. You can see it gets deeper starting today and going through Monday. You can see the blues and the greens coming across Wyoming, Colorado, the Great Basin states. As we mentioned several times when we show you these precipitable water charts, it doesn't mean it's going to rain in all of those green and blue areas, but the water is there to help initiate rain-producing showers and thunderstorms. And this is deep enough moisture that they could be decent rain producers if you're lucky enough to get underneath one of those. These thunderstorms will want to get initiated over the mountains first. So if you're in the high country or planning to be up there, that's where you're going to get the thunderstorms earliest later on into the plains. Here's your thunderstorm forecast for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They become more widespread, and this is where they are on Monday. So you can see there's a 4-day period where, generally speaking, in this region, it's going to be each afternoon and evening is going to be active with showers and thunderstorms. Have yourself a good Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.